Hello, my name is Alora. While I was wiping sweat off my sick child's forehead at 3 a.m., my husband's sister took my car, without asking, and wrecked it. She walked away without a scratch, and somehow I was the one walking 2 miles in the snow, every day, for 2 months. Everyone said, "Let it go, she's family," even when they took the rental, even when I got sick from walking. But then the police report came, and what I found in there wasn't just a lie, it was a plan. So how do you stay silent when your own home becomes a stage for betrayal? And what would you do if the people closest to you weren't just hiding things? They were rewriting your name out of everything you'd built? The fever came back around 3 in the morning. Mira's small body was radiating heat as I cradled her in my lap, rocking back and forth in the worn kitchen chair that creaked every time I moved. I dozed off in between, wiping her down with a damp cloth and checking her breathing. But every time she stirred, my heart jumped. Her asthma had landed us in urgent care just a week ago, and I wasn't taking any chances. I didn't wake Jareth. He had work in the morning, and besides, he wouldn't know what to do. He rarely did. I could handle this. I always had. The snow hadn't stopped for 2 days, and the forecast called for more. It was the kind of upstate New York winter that made your bones ache just from looking out the window. When the sun began to rise, I tucked Mira back into bed beside the humidifier and tiptoed into the kitchen to check the medicine cabinet. We were out of acetaminophen. Of course we were. I grabbed my coat and reached for my car keys from the hook by the door. The keys were gone. At first, I thought maybe I'd misplaced them. I checked my purse, the laundry room, the junk drawer. Still nothing. My chest tightened. I walked back into the bedroom where Jareth was snoring, face buried in the pillow. "Did you move my car?" He stirred slightly, not even opening his eyes. "Maybe Vera took it." I stood there, waiting for him to say more. He didn't. I checked the driveway. Empty. No note, no text. Nothing. The pharmacy was only 1.5 miles away, but in this weather, it might as well have been on another planet. I wrapped Mira in an extra blanket and called Jareth's mother to come watch her. She lived 5 blocks over and walked because her car doesn't do snow. I didn't argue. With 2 pairs of socks and an old pair of boots that barely held together at the seams, I trudged through the slush, each step soaking up into my jeans. By the time I got to the pharmacy, I was shivering and windburned, my fingers stiff as I handed over my insurance card. The pharmacist asked if I wanted to wait. I told her I couldn't afford not to. By the time I got home, Mira was asleep, and my mother-in-law was watching a cooking show with the volume too loud. I thanked her and poured the medicine into a spoon, praying the fever would break soon. It was almost dark when Vera walked through the front door. She tossed the car keys on the counter like they weighed nothing. "Traffic was insane," she said, digging through the fridge. "But hey, I made it. No biggie, right?" I didn't say a word. Neither did Jareth, who was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what kind of person just takes someone's car without asking, especially when that someone has a sick child and no other way to get around. But I didn't. I looked at Jareth, waiting for him to say something. His silence told me everything. Vera opened a can of sparkling water, took a sip, and said, "You okay? You look like you've been through it." Still, I said nothing. That night, Mira's fever finally broke. I sat on the edge of her bed and brushed her damp hair back from her forehead. Her breathing had settled, soft and rhythmic. I stayed there long after she fell asleep. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something had shifted and no one else had noticed. The next morning, Jareth told me his mom wanted to take Vera out to dinner, just the 3 of them, to lift her spirits. I almost laughed. "She's been going through a lot," he said, like that explained everything. I watched them pull out of the driveway in my car. My car? I stood by the window holding Mira's hand, both of us in pajamas, watching the taillights disappear. "Why don't you come with us, Mom?" Mira asked softly. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know where to begin. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, while the refrigerator hummed and the snow fell quietly outside. I poured myself a cup of tea I didn't drink and stared at the keys Vera had flung onto the counter. She didn't ask. She just took. And Jareth let her. I told myself not to make a scene, but something in me had already begun to shift. I didn't say anything that morning, not when Jareth offered Vera the last of the coffee without glancing in my direction. Not when she dropped her cereal bowl in the sink and left it floating, saying she was running late. Not when the front door slammed and I stood there in the hallway with my jaw clenched and my breath thin. The crash happened on a Tuesday, coldest day that winter so far. The kind of cold that stiffens your bones before you step off the porch. I was on my lunch break at the clinic when Jareth called. His voice was low, almost bored. "Hey, minor thing. Vera had a little fender bender. She's fine. Just thought you should know." I blinked at the phone. "What do you mean, a little fender bender? With what car?" "Our car," he said. "Well, your Charger. She took it to get some papers notarized." I didn't remember handing her my keys. Because I didn't. I walked out of the clinic without telling anyone where I was going. The air sliced through my jacket, and my fingers felt numb by the time I reached the parking lot. The Charger sat crooked in one of the back corners, like it had limped home and tried to hide. The entire passenger side was crushed. The front right fender was bent inward, like something had punched it and held on. The side mirror was gone. The hood didn't close all the way. My car looked like it had been chewed up and spit out. She showed up 10 minutes later, still chewing gum, coat open despite the cold. "Some idiot ran a red light," she said before I could open my mouth. "Totally not my fault. Honestly, could have been worse." She didn't look at the damage, just popped her gum and kept walking toward the house. "Are you kidding me?" I said, finally catching my breath. "You didn't even ask to take it." Jareth stepped between us like I was being irrational. "Let's not start. She's shaken up." "She doesn't look shaken," I snapped. "She's your sister," he said, like that was supposed to explain everything. "She's your sister," I corrected him. Vera turned back, flipping her hair over one shoulder. "It's insured, right? Just file the claim." Then she disappeared inside like it was nothing, like she hadn't totaled the one thing I'd worked for years to own. I stood there for a while, wind slapping at my face, trying to decide whether to scream or just fall apart. Instead, I walked around the car, took photos, opened the trunk to make sure she hadn't left anything in there that might surprise me. The insurance agent was polite. Too polite. I could hear it in his voice, like he thought I was calling on behalf of someone else. I gave him the details, told him my sister-in-law was driving, said she didn't have permission, but I wasn't pressing charges. Not yet. A few days later, the rental car arrived. A Kia sedan. Serviceable. Nothing special. Jareth took it first. "Just dropping Vera off at an interview," he said. "Then I'll bring it back." But he didn't. The next morning, Vera had the keys. "I've got apartment viewings. Can't be late," she said, already wearing boots too clean for this weather. I stood on the porch, watching her pull out of the driveway, the heater fogging up the windows before she even reached the curb. Then I started walking. 2 miles to work. 19 degrees. My boots leaked. The salt burned through the fabric of my gloves. Cars passed, splashing slush onto the sidewalk. I didn't cry. I didn't even sniffle. I just kept moving. The walk back was worse. By then, the wind had picked up, and my coat was stiff with frozen water. I stripped it off inside the entryway, peeled off the gloves, and hung them over the radiator. No one asked where I'd been. That night, I coughed until my ribs ached. Jareth said I probably caught a chill. Vera said nothing at all. She was on the couch, scrolling her phone, laughing at a video that was too loud. The next morning, I left early. Didn't wait for anyone to ask how I was feeling. I bundled Mira up and dropped her at my mother's before heading out. The cold was worse now, sharp enough to sting, thick enough to feel like breathing glass. Halfway through my walk, I heard the familiar whir of the rental car behind me. I turned just in time to see Vera at the wheel, laughing into her phone, music blaring through half-open windows. She didn't slow down, didn't wave, just drove past like I didn't exist. I stopped walking. The street was quiet, save for the crunch of ice beneath my boots. I could still feel the heat in my face, even after the car disappeared from view. I stood there, in the middle of the sidewalk, cars parked on either side, snow piled high, people in their warm homes watching morning shows. I stood there and realized something. I had been quiet for too long. I had excused too much, let things go, made peace, smoothed over. I kept my mouth shut. But the part of me that let them walk all over me, that part was starting to rot. I hadn't planned to come home early that day. One of the doctors at the clinic canceled afternoon appointments, and with a splitting headache and the flu crawling through half the staff, I figured it was a good time to slip out. I told myself I'd lie down, maybe catch up on a load of laundry. Instead, I walked into a moment I was never supposed to witness. I didn't announce myself when I got in. The house was unusually quiet, no reality show blaring from the living room, no clinking of dishes in the sink. My boots were still wet from the slush, so I tiptoed across the tile, hoping not to wake Mira if she was napping. That's when I heard Jareth's voice. I froze just outside the kitchen. "Just tell them she gave you permission," he was saying. His voice was low, like he was trying not to be overheard. Ironic, really. "She won't fight it. You know her. She's not like that." A pause. Then Vera's laugh, sharp, careless, floating through the phone speaker like static. "She's too soft," she said. "Always has been." My stomach turned. I couldn't move at first, couldn't even breathe. I stood there with my hand on the wall, fingers pressed into the drywall like it could hold me up. I didn't hear the rest of the call. I didn't need to. They'd lied. Not just about the car, but about me. About who I was to them. I didn't say anything, didn't confront him. I walked quietly back out the front door and sat in the car that wasn't mine anymore. I sat there until the heat kicked in, until my fingers stopped shaking. That night, Jareth suggested dinner with his mother and Vera. "She's had a rough couple of weeks," he said, spooning rice onto his plate like it was any other Tuesday. "It might be nice for all of us to sit down together." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I changed into a clean sweater, helped Mira with her socks, and set the table for 4. Mira asked if she could sit by Grandma. Vera asked if we had any wine. I said no. Dinner was quiet at first, forks clinking, chewing, small talk. Then I opened my mouth. "I think we need to talk about the car." Jareth looked at me, then back at his food. Vera didn't even pause her bite. "I already told you," she said. "The other driver ran the light." "That's not what I'm talking about." Vera sighed, dramatic like she was the one burdened. "We're all tired of this drama, Alora. It's done. Move on." I turned to Jareth's mother. "It's not just the car. It's how they handled it. How I was treated like I didn't matter." She folded her napkin slowly. "Alora, please, don't ruin dinner." And that was it. No one looked at me. No one defended me. No one even asked what I meant. It was like my voice floated into the air and dissolved. I stopped talking. We finished dinner in silence. Mira asked if we could watch cartoons. Vera said she had a call. Jareth nodded and said he'd take care of the dishes. I went upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I pulled out the notebook I kept in the back of my nightstand, the one I used for recipes once, then shopping lists, then things I didn't want to forget. I wrote down the date, the exact time I came home, the words I heard from behind the wall. "She's too soft, always has been." I wrote down what Jareth had said, what Vera had laughed. Then I listed the damage to the car, the timeline. When the rental arrived, who drove it first, who took it next, how many days I'd walked in sub-zero temperatures, every detail I could recall. I even wrote down what I was wearing when I found the car dented. It wasn't about the car anymore. It was about who I was in that house. I wasn't the woman who needed help. I wasn't the mother holding it all together. I was just the one they could step over. I clicked the pen shut, tucked the notebook beneath my pillow. That night, I didn't say goodnight to anyone. No one noticed. The next morning, I called the auto shop under the guise of checking when my car would be ready for inspection. The man on the phone, Ron, I think his name was, said I could come by if I needed to grab anything from inside. "We won't touch it till we have adjuster clearance," he added casually. So I left work an hour early. Told them Mira had a follow-up. Not a lie, just not today. The lot was half-frozen mud, tire ruts stiff like concrete. My Charger sat at the back near a rusted-out SUV, both of them looking like forgotten projects. The sun was starting to dip, casting a weak orange glare across the dented metal. I walked up slow, hands shoved into the pockets of my coat. Ron met me at the front. He was tall, beard going gray, hands perpetually black around the nails. "I figured you'd want to grab your phone charger or registration," he said, handing me the keys without question. "I left a scarf," I lied. "No worries." "Oh, and just so you know, we logged some notes for your insurance. Couple things looked off when we took the initial photos." My head lifted. "Off how?" He gestured toward the hood. "Passenger fender looks replaced. Badly. Non-OEM part. Aftermarket stuff. And the brake pads were swapped recently, but not with dealer parts. We just flagged it because, well, it didn't look factory, you know?" He chuckled like it was funny. I didn't laugh. I just nodded. "Thanks." Inside the car, the smell was familiar but wrong. Faint perfume I didn't wear. A used gum wrapper sat in the cup holder, lipstick stain across the foil. I stared at it for a moment, then tucked it in a napkin and shoved it in my purse. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't say a word when I walked through the front door and passed Vera sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with the kind of peace only someone utterly guiltless can manage. I went straight upstairs. That night, while Jareth snored lightly beside me, I opened my email on the old laptop we rarely used. It was linked to a shared inbox we made when we first got married, meant for bills, travel plans, party invites. No one had logged in for months. I typed in the password. It still worked. Most of the inbox was junk, coupons, credit card statements, but a search for insurance pulled up threads from the last 6 weeks. Most were unread. One subject line stood out. Estimate photos, 2014 Dodge. I opened it. Nothing shocking. Just damage pics. Then a forwarded note from Jareth's email to the agent. "Thanks. We'll go ahead and use the higher quote. Easier this way." That phrase stuck in my throat. Easier this way. For who? I was still scrolling when my phone buzzed. A message from Cassie, one of the nurses I worked with. "Hey," it read. "Random, but is this your car? Saw this on Facebook a while back. Looks like your driveway?" She included a screenshot. The photo was unmistakable. My Charger, parked in front of our garage, snow still fresh on the shingles. A clean, untouched version of it, before the crash. The listing name was fake, something generic. Price was laughably low. The post date, a week before the accident. I felt sick. I clicked through to the archived post and saved it, every image. Then I printed them out, 4 sheets of glossy proof. The next day, I stopped by my sister's after work to drop off a casserole. Just an excuse. I used her printer, her kitchen, her silence. She didn't ask why I was suddenly interested in PDF formatting. I didn't offer. That night, back home, I sat at the kitchen table while everyone else pretended life was normal. Vera reheated something in the microwave. Jareth cleared his throat 3 times, but said nothing. I didn't look at either of them. I was done being quiet. But I still had to be smart. They thought I was cleaning or folding laundry in the spare room. But I was in my office, door cracked just enough to hear the hum of Vera's voice downstairs, her laugh as she relived some story with Jareth about her close call. I had my earbuds in, but no music was playing. The only thing I was listening to was my own heartbeat, steady now, even as everything else frayed at the edges. Late that afternoon, while Mira napped and Vera left for a walk to clear her head, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. It was from the insurance adjuster, his tone polite but clipped. "Hi, Alora. I just wanted to go over something a little unusual that came up in the police report. It might be nothing, but I think you'll want to take a look. I've forwarded it to your email. Let me know when you've had a chance to review it." I opened the email immediately. The report was attached as a PDF, standard formatting, all business. I scrolled slowly until I saw the section labeled Driver Statement. Driver, Vera, stated she had verbal permission from vehicle owner, Alora, to operate the car at the time of the accident. I reread that line 5 times. Verbal permission. My hands were steady as I highlighted the sentence, steady as I downloaded the file and saved a copy under a folder now growing in both size and significance. Documented lies. She didn't just use my car. She didn't just wreck it. She claimed I gave her permission, publicly, legally. She positioned me as complicit in her mess, maybe even liable if anything else unraveled. That evening, Jareth made spaghetti, humming to himself like nothing had changed. Vera poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle she bought with money she didn't earn, barefoot in my kitchen. I excused myself before dinner hit the table, said I had a headache, said I was going to lie down. Instead, I went back to my office. The tablet we used to let Mira watch cartoons on vacations was still synced to Vera's old group chats. I hadn't remembered until I saw her name pop up on the notification screen the night before. One of those random glitches that only happens when you've forgotten to log out completely. I tapped open the thread. Dozens of messages, mostly noise. But then, honestly, I could take that car again today. She wouldn't say a word. My breath caught. "She's too dumb to fight back," another message said, followed by laughing emojis. One of Vera's friends responded, "I don't know how you live with her. I'd go crazy." Vera replied, "She's just invisible. It's easy." I didn't realize I'd been gripping the tablet until my fingers went numb. Invisible. That word stayed with me the rest of the night, even as Jareth knocked lightly on the door to ask if I wanted dinner. I told him no. Later, I sat in bed while Mira slept next to me, curled up like she always had when she was little and sick. Her tiny breath, steady and warm, was the only thing that tethered me to calm. I opened my notebook again, wrote down the date, the report citation, the chat excerpts, the names of Vera's friends in the thread. I labeled it, False Statement to Authorities, Digital Harassment. I made a new folder on my desktop, Vera, Case Prep, and then I scheduled a consultation with a local attorney who specialized in small claims and vehicle-related insurance disputes. Quietly, no announcements, no loud confrontations in the kitchen. They didn't need to know what I was doing. They'd see it when the envelope arrived. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to file. The next morning came gray and damp, the kind of morning where the air feels heavy before you even open the door. I dropped Mira at preschool early, then circled back home under the excuse of needing to catch up on paperwork for the clinic. Truth was, I needed time alone, with my computer, my documents, and the growing pit in my stomach. I started with Jareth's inbox. I didn't have to dig deep. He wasn't the type to delete emails, and he used the same password for everything, a habit he once joked about, and I never forgot. The subject lines came up like dust off an old shelf. Estimate adjustments, full damage assessment, follow-up settlement option. One chain stood out, titled, RE, Full Estimate on 2014 Dodge. It included attachments from the adjuster, itemized costs, and a few short responses. One from Jareth. We should just go with the higher tier. Makes things simpler. That line rolled through my chest like a slow bruise. What struck me more was the CC field. Vera. Her name, her email, on every message. No questions, no reason to include her. Yet there she was, copied in like she was co-owner, co-decision maker, co-beneficiary. I didn't scream. I didn't pace the room or punch the air. I saved the emails into a new folder. Financial collusion. After lunch, while Jareth and Vera were out getting groceries, I logged into the DMV's vehicle registration portal. A quiet suspicion had been scratching at the back of my mind for weeks. I typed in the VIN number from my insurance file, entered my last name. Nothing. My name was gone. The car, the one I paid off after 4 years of double shifts and skipping vacations, was no longer registered under me. The title had been transferred to Jareth. Not last week, not after the crash. 2 months ago, before any of this happened. I sat there, staring at the screen, heart thrumming in that low, bitter way that doesn't even raise your pulse anymore. Just pain without panic. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was calculated. The charger hadn't just been used, it had been taken, legally scrubbed from my name, prepped for sale, or something worse. And I had been walking through snowdrifts, thinking I was doing the right thing, keeping peace, being patient, holding my tongue. I closed the laptop, walked into the kitchen, and turned off the overhead light. I sat at the table in the near dark, watching the window fog over with late afternoon condensation. I didn't cry right away. At first, I just stared at the tabletop, remembering every oil change I'd done myself, every payment made instead of new shoes or dinner out. I remembered Jareth's words when I first bought that car. "You didn't have to do that. We could have shared mine." No, we couldn't. When the tears did come, they weren't wild or desperate. They were slow, the kind that slide down without you realizing your face has gone warm. It wasn't sadness. Not entirely. It was grief. Not just for the car. For the marriage I thought I was in. For the partnership I believed I had. This wasn't a marriage. It was a contract I hadn't read carefully enough. And Jareth? He'd been editing the terms behind my back. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve, pulled my phone from the counter, and opened my text. "I'm ready," I wrote to the attorney. "Let's move forward." Within the hour, she replied, "Understood. We'll begin gathering the formal documents. I'll walk you through everything in our call tomorrow." I locked the screen. That evening, Jareth came home with Vera trailing behind him, laughing about something someone said at the checkout line. "You wouldn't believe what the cashier," she started, stopping when she saw me sitting at the table. I didn't move, didn't blink. Jareth glanced at me. "You okay?" I smiled. Never better. They wanted silence. What they got was strategy. The attorney's office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse, tucked between a florist and a tax prep place with dusty blinds. It didn't look like much from the outside, but when I walked in carrying my manila folder labeled Truth, something about the air inside felt different. Structured, steady, sharp. The receptionist offered me coffee, but I shook my head. I couldn't risk the distraction. My attorney, Sandra, greeted me with a firm handshake. She had short gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, and she wore a navy blue blazer like it was part of her skin. No small talk, just motioned for me to sit and open the folder the moment I handed it over. She flipped through the contents in silence. The printed messages, the insurance emails, screenshots from the Facebook listing, a copy of the police report, the DMV records. Then she held up the police report and read one line aloud. "Unauthorized use noted by responding officer." She looked up at me. "Alora, this is a textbook case of manipulation and fraudulent misrepresentation. And frankly, it's not even a hard case to prove." For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift in my chest. A breath I hadn't known I was holding, released, slow, but solid. Sandra laid out our options: insurance dispute, civil claim, even a criminal misrepresentation charge, depending on how far I wanted to take it. I told her I didn't want to destroy anyone. I just wanted the damage acknowledged. The theft. The silence. The rewriting of what was mine. "Let's document everything," she said, "and keep it clean. No texts, no threats. Let the proof speak." By the time I left, the light outside had softened into early spring haze. I picked up a USB drive from the pharmacy on the way home, something small but dependable. When I got back, I went straight into the office and began organizing every file, email, and photo into that drive. I labeled it in all caps. Truth. Then I backed it up again to a cloud account only I had access to. I printed copies of the strongest pieces of evidence and slid them into sheet protectors. I stored one binder under the floorboard in my closet and another inside Mira's old toy box, beneath a pile of stuffed animals. The next morning, I wrote a short note and recorded it as a voice memo. If anything happens to me, if this gets out of hand, everything you need is labeled and stored in 3 places. This isn't paranoia, it's protection. That night, something about the rhythm of the house shifted. I caught Vera eyeing the shelf in the hallway like she was trying to remember if she'd seen something there before. She paused longer near my office door. I started locking it when I left. Jareth noticed, of course. "You working on something?" he asked, handing me the mail like it was still 2018, and we were still married in all the ways that counted. "Just organizing things," I said, not lying, but not answering either. Then came the first real sign that Vera knew the tides were turning. It was a Wednesday evening. I had just come back from dropping off documents at Sandra's office. The garage door was open. Strange, since I never leave it that way. I stepped inside and noticed the side cabinet ajar. Tools shifted, nothing gone. But the lock on the drawer that held our household files was bent, like someone had tried to pry it. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't ask. The next morning, I installed a security camera just above the back door. It wasn't obvious, but it wasn't hidden either. I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to wonder what I knew and what I didn't. Later that day, Vera hovered in the kitchen while I packed Mira's lunch. "You've been quiet lately," she said, swirling her coffee like it owed her something. "And weirdly, busy." "I've got a lot on my plate," I said, still slicing apples. She leaned in. "Everything okay? I mean, you're not upset about anything, are you?" I looked up at her and smiled, calm, clear, unshaken. "If I was upset," I said, "you'd already know." She didn't smile back, just blinked, then turned and left the room. That night, I checked the footage. No one had touched the garage since I installed the camera, but that wasn't the point. They poked the quiet one. Now she had a folder and a deadline. I don't need revenge. I need receipts. That was the thought that sat with me on Friday afternoon as I tucked my coat tighter and stepped into the cafe off East Avenue. My mother had chosen the spot. Quiet, out of the way, neutral ground. It smelled of chamomile tea and burnt toast, and the table by the window was already claimed by her, hands folded, cup steaming. She looked up when I approached and gave a small smile, the kind reserved for acquaintances at church. "Hey, sweetheart." I slid into the seat across from her, trying not to let my disappointment leak into my expression. We made small talk for a minute. She asked about Mira. I said she was fine. She asked about the clinic. I said it was busy, as usual. Then I pulled out the envelope. "I need to tell you something," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. I laid out the situation, the car, the insurance fraud, the false statement in the police report, the emails between Jareth and Vera. I even included the group chat screenshot. I watched her face carefully, hoping for something. Shock, anger, anything. She stirred her tea instead. A full 10 seconds passed. Finally, she said, "I know it's upsetting, but she's still your family. Don't make a big deal out of this." The breath in my chest vanished like it had never been there. "She filed a false report," I said. "Jareth gave her access to money that wasn't hers. They sold my property behind my back." "I'm not saying it's right," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "But dragging the whole family through a lawsuit? That helps who?" I nodded. Once. That was the last time I asked anyone in my bloodline to understand. I walked home instead of calling a ride. The air was colder than the forecast had promised, but I welcomed it. It scraped against my skin and kept my brain sharp. Later that night, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and tried to decompress. Mira was asleep early after a long day at school. I let the TV run on low volume while I scrolled through my phone, catching up on emails and checking the weather for the next week. Then I saw it. Vera's Instagram story lit up at the top of the screen. I almost swiped past it, but something in me stopped. My thumb hovered. I tapped. There she was. Vera, posing in front of a full-length mirror in a tan trench coat, glass of champagne in hand. The next slide, a close-up of a black Chanel handbag on her arm, the logo front and center. The caption read, "Deserve to feel good again. Healing, Arsha gratitude, level up." I scrolled down. Spa visits, fancy sushi, perfectly done nails. A photo of a quote that said, "Sometimes you gotta save yourself, even if it means burning bridges." I looked at the boots I'd worn to walk to work in sleet that morning. The cracked soles, the loose stitching. My throat went dry, but not from tears, from clarity. I stood, walked into my office, and turned on the light. The file was ready. Not just the folder I'd shown Sandra. The full one. The one with timestamps, receipts, backups. I added screenshots of Vera's story, noted the date, time, and caption, included the bag's model and estimated retail value. Then I opened my email. 3 messages. The first to Sandra. "Please find attached new digital evidence to support claim of fraudulent gain through insurance misuse." The second to the State Insurance Fraud Division. "Formal submission of documented abuse of policy settlement proceeds. Visual confirmation of illicit gain included." The third to Jareth. No subject line, no greeting. Just chat logs, marketplace screenshots, police report, Vera's Instagram, insurance quotes. I attached them all, then typed, "You said I was too soft. Let's see how soft this feels." I hit send. The next morning, I made pancakes for Mira like it was any other Saturday. She asked for extra syrup. I kissed her forehead and told her she could have 2 squeezes, not 3. Jareth and Vera came home in the early afternoon. I heard the front door open, the familiar sound of bags being set down, the shuffle of boots on the mat. But I was already packed, and waiting. By the time the front door opened, I had been sitting in the living room for almost an hour. Everything I needed was zipped inside the navy blue suitcase next to me. The manila envelope sat on the coffee table, sealed, waiting. Jareth stepped in first, his voice mid-laugh, as he said something to Vera, something smug and low. They both froze when they saw me sitting there. No coat, no shoes, just waiting. He blinked. "Hey, what's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I reached forward and picked up the envelope, walked it over and placed it gently in his hands. "What is this?" "Open it." He flipped the clasp and pulled out the documents. His eyes flicked from page to page. Divorce papers, a copy of the police report, the insurance records, screenshots from Vera's social media, even the resale listing. Behind him, Vera scoffed. "You've got to be kidding me." I looked at her, not with anger, not even disgust. "You helped her erase me," I said to Jareth, "and I'm choosing not to disappear?" He didn't speak, didn't defend, just held the envelope like it burned. I picked up my suitcase, wheeled it to the door. My ride was already waiting. I'd called the cab an hour earlier, just in case I got cold feet. But there was no chill left in me. "Where's Mira?" Jareth asked. "She's with my sister for the weekend," I replied. "I'll be staying with them for now." Vera leaned against the doorway with crossed arms, trying to look unbothered. "So dramatic." I didn't flinch. "You spent my money. You crashed my car. You posted it all online like it was your victory lap. I'm done giving you space to pretend you're innocent." She laughed, but it didn't sound like confidence anymore. It sounded forced. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me with finality. The taxi driver helped load my bag into the trunk. I slid into the back seat and didn't look back. It rained that night. Soft, cleansing. 1 week later, I sat in my sister's guest room, sorting through Mira's backpack. I found a folded paper she hadn't shown anyone, likely tucked in during art class and forgotten. It was a drawing of us. Mira wore a red cape and a crown. I stood next to her with dark circles under my eyes, but a smile. Her tiny handwriting underneath read, "Mom is a hero. She can't fly, but she always comes back." I pressed the paper to my chest and let the tears fall. Quiet, steady. Not from pain, but from release. For the first time, they weren't tears of loss. They were the tears you cry when you know you finally saved yourself. The days that followed were calm, surprisingly. Sandra sent over the final revisions for the financial separation. No court battle needed. Jareth didn't contest. Maybe he knew better. Or maybe he just didn't have the energy to fight someone who was finally fighting back. Vera? Word got around that her insurance claim was flagged for investigation. Her posts went quiet. No more spa days. No more motivational quotes. Jareth tried texting once. Just wanted to talk. I blocked the number. I wasn't angry anymore. But I wasn't going back. I didn't win anything flashy. No court scene. No public apology. No screaming match in the rain. But I had my name. My daughter's trust. My proof. And peace. They erased me from the car title. But my daughter still wrote my name in stars. Sometimes the people who tell you to keep the peace are the ones who benefit from your silence the most. This story wasn't about a car. It was about dignity, boundaries, and the moment you decide your worth isn't up for discussion. Have you ever stayed quiet just to avoid shaking the table, only to realize the table was never set for you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that speak the quiet truths, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from,